I have a few creepy stories, but I'll start with this one since it was the most dangerous. One night, my boyfriend and I were out drinking and hanging out with our friends, and went back to our other friend's apartment. They lived about 10 to 15 minutes away from us, in the next town over. It was getting pretty late into the night, and we both had work the next day, so we called an Uber to come pick us up. So our Uber gets there. At first, everything is fine. We make casual small talk, as you tend to do with Ubers or Lyfts. The vibe was pretty nice. The dude seemed nice enough, nothing too much to worry about. I was completely exhausted, and I just really wanted to get home. I remember just this feeling of jolting wide awake out of nowhere. We get to the end of this street. I recognize it as being close-ish to our homes. While I'm really bad at directions, this was a turn where it was like, you turn right, you're going towards our homes. You turn left, and you're clearly driving in the opposite direction. This guy gets to the stoplight and flicks his left blinker on. I immediately started looking around and looked to my boyfriend, who had also been put on edge. My boyfriend asked the driver where he was going because it was clearly the wrong way. He told my boyfriend not to worry. He was from the area and knew a shortcut. Whatever, we both relaxed a little bit, especially because this was a main road and there were plenty of side streets around that he could have been cutting through. He gets to another stoplight and has the ability to either make a right, which would put him going towards the general direction where we lived, or left, which was starting to go to the direction of the next town over. He flicked his left blinker on again, and at this point I looked over. I noticed that his Uber app and GPS tracking was totally turned off. His entire phone was off, in fact, so there was nothing tracking his driving or location, and he was no longer being monitored by the app. My heart started beating. I got out my phone to call 911 and my car keys because I have this shiv-like stabby weapon thing as a keychain. Stay strapped, sisters. My boyfriend flies out of his seat and lunges toward the front seat. He was half standing up and started yelling, asking the guy where the fuck he was going because we knew he was going the wrong way. The guy immediately flicked his right blinker on instead and skirted into the right lane instead of the left where he had previously been. He tried to apologize over and over again. My boyfriend just said, "You know what? Never mind. We're gonna get out right here. This far is fine, so please unlock the doors." When he went to unlock the doors, the driver freaked out, got really defensive and on edge. He was saying these weird things like, "I'm sorry, I promise I'll take you home now. I'm going the right way right now, so I'm sorry, buddy, I got you." He basically admitted he was trying to take us in the totally wrong direction. I can't remember if we just rode the rest of the way in that Uber, because there were likely no other ones around at that hour, and we felt like we called the guy out enough that he wouldn't try anything, or if we actually got out and began to walk home. Like I said, it was a very exhausting drunk night. The most chilling part about this for me was how he had his app off and how quick he was to correct himself as soon as we noticed something was up. Like he didn't even try to come up with a cover story to justify his actions. He admitted that before my boyfriend freaked him out, he was not taking us to our destination. We reported that guy the next day on the Uber app and have never come into contact with him since. I don't know what he was planning, but I pray to whoever is up there that he didn't have an opportunity to scare anyone else like this ever again. This all happened in August of 2017. I was 23 years old at the time and had just moved back into my mom's place, which happened to be about 30 minutes from my nearest friend's house. My car had broken down, so I was Ubering pretty much everywhere I had to go. I went down to my friend's place to help them move, went to Target to grab some champagne and orange juice because I apparently hated myself, and thought an imminent hangover sounded like a really great idea. Fast forward to that night. Of course, I'm doubled over throwing up with a migraine and can barely lift my head. I had to work the next day's morning shift as well. My friends have no idea where they have any sort of over-the-counter meds for headaches. But of course, the stoner of the house offers me an edible. Now, I may have killed the bottle of champagne, but I hadn't touched marijuana in years. I ate half of that edible and waited about 45 minutes to feel better. Then I called my Uber. I was getting picked up in an apartment complex, and of course had to walk to the front to find the driver, because I've never met an Uber driver that can locate an address with any accuracy. I hop in the back seat and he turns around to introduce himself. This guy had a southern drawl that would make molasses seem like water. It was at this moment I realized I fucked up. I told him I had a migraine and just wanted to go home. He pulled out a bottle of water that had already been opened and some random pills and told me these should make me feel much better. Of course, I politely grabbed them and then proceeded to stuff them into the seat and shove the water bottle in the pocket in front of me. We began our 30-minute journey to my mom's apartment. If it weren't for Mary Jane coming along for the ride, I probably would have hopped out right then. The guy started off the drive telling me his prison stories. Then somehow it delved into how the world was going to end by December 20-something of 2017. Every few sentences, he now started bringing up his bunker. He asked me constantly if I wanted to head there instead of home. My high-ass self thought the best thing to do was tell him that I'd love to, but I had work so I can't. Maybe next time, I guess. He was cycling through these conspiracies, from the earth is flat to Kandahar, Afghanistan giants. He leaned over and whispered to me, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but look up Kandahar, Afghanistan on YouTube. Also, in case y'all didn't know this, the world ain't heliocentric, just get a pair of binoculars and you'll see. At some point, he's telling me that he has an arsenal of guns, he grows opium at his bunker, and asked me to come with him. I was panicked, texting everyone I know, sharing my location, and even started recording. I managed to get about 7 minutes in total of this 30-minute drive on film. We were getting closer and closer to the exit he needed to take to drop me off. He was still in the far left lane of this 4-lane highway. I kept telling him to move over. The exit was coming up. This creepy-ass fucker kept telling me how well-stocked his bunker was. And then he missed my exit. I finally lost it and started screaming at him to get me home. My mom was waiting for me, and I had work tomorrow. Like my job means anything to this psycho, or even to me. He finally did get off the exit after I started kicking his seat and threatening to jump out of the moving car. I ran out of his car so fast when we hit the red light outside the apartment complex. As soon as I got inside, I tried telling my mom what happened, but she brushed it off and was more disappointed that I told her I had taken an edible. The next morning, I coherently explained what actually happened and showed her the videos of the drive. We both reported him to Uber. I still do take Ubers on occasion, but I'll never use one while alone or inebriated ever again. This is also the reason I don't consume THC. The universe knows when I'm high and just loves to make things like this happen to me. I work in food service front of house, so in the early days of the pandemic with the restaurants closed, I was taking work pretty much wherever I could find it. An old friend clued me into a medical office that needed someone to come in and do a bit of light filing. I was able to go in at night to limit direct contact with people, so I jumped at the opportunity right away. Ironically, the medical office job had been the safest I'd been offered so far COVID-wise. I wanted to avoid the bus if I could due to crowds, so I decided to swing for a rideshare app. It's not all that expensive in my area, and I really didn't want to catch the virus. I headed in at almost 3 a.m. because it was after the cleaning crew had already left. I was kicking myself for being so cautious though, because I was really exhausted. I stumbled onto the block looking for my ride, and to my tired self's great relief, the car spotted me almost immediately and pulled up alongside me asking, "Uber?" I had been cluelessly wandering up and down the street searching. The ride was taking a while, but I'd only just moved here last year, so I wasn't too familiar with all of the surrounding areas, and I didn't think much of the long ride time. I was pretty alert at first, so was trying to pass the time playing games on my phone and stuff, but the car didn't have a compatible phone charger, and I wasn't sure the building would have one either, so I wanted to save my battery to be able to call a ride back. I shut my phone down into airplane mode and eventually drifted off from a combination of tiredness and boredom. Now, I don't often take rideshare, so being alone with a strange driver often put me a bit on edge, but this guy had a pretty boring car and a very standard look to him. He actually looked a little bit like my brother even. Young, clean-kept, listening to jazz. Nothing that screamed, "You need to micromanage this trip." When we arrived, the driver tried to wake me up by calling to me from the front, but I was in too deep of a sleep and couldn't fully distinguish it from a dream. Finally, he awkwardly jimmied my leg to wake me up and kept saying, Ma'am, we're here now." I was so embarrassed that I'd been so out of it, I just gave a hurried thanks and booked it out of the car and into the building. As I looked around though, I began to realize it was nothing what I had expected out of an office park. I had seen a street view of the building when I first looked at the business, and it had appeared to be a strip mall plaza. And the further I went, the more loudly alarm bells were ringing in my gut. This structure was semi-dilapidated and was pitch black dark past the entryway. I expected at least some lights to be off in the nighttime, but not the entire building. I skittered across the concrete foundation comprising what was left of the lobby area and told myself they must just be renovating. I followed signs for the stairs. After what felt like ages but was likely just a few minutes, all I had passed was construction equipment, a couple locked doors, and a lot of smashed windows. I was certain I was not going to find a medical office here, and figured maybe I'd mixed up the address on accident. I took out my phone to double check, but once I got it out of airplane mode, I could barely get a signal. I kept moving around the building, pacing, looking for a stronger one. I eventually confirmed in my text that I had written down the correct address just by scrolling back, which didn't require service. Since I had only been inside for a few minutes at most, I figured I should try and get in touch with the driver, because if I'd entered the correct address, then it was only fair that he should continue my ride to the correct place and save me the additional fees of calling a second trip, considering this was his mix-up after all. The app was taking forever to load with my slow service, but before I could get to a cloud of reception, I heard a rustling sound in the lower level of the building. I was on the top floor, and the only stairwell I was aware of was the one I had taken up, so that would force me into the middle of the building. There was no way to exit this situation without encountering whoever was downstairs. In an abandoned building, in the latest hours of the night, I figured chances were pretty high that it was a tweaker, and I had no desire to try slipping past one of those, especially when it was late enough that they were probably on something, so already jumpy and on edge. I tried to get a text out to a group of friends with my address and a request to call 911 to help get me from the property, because I didn't feel safe walking in that neighborhood at night and didn't have enough reception to call a new ride, but the message just wouldn't send. The reception was too weak even for that. I gave up on getting my phone going and started checking for another stairwell or even a window with balconies or dumpsters that could be used to exit the second floor as a last resort, in the event that whoever was downstairs decided to come up. I scrambled over to a door with a stairs sign on it, but those stairs were completely dilapidated, and it was essentially a completely straight drop down to the first floor. At this point, the worst case scenario began to unfold. I heard whoever was downstairs begin making their way up. I thought fast and figured based on my walkabout, the floor was basically one giant loop. I would have to wait for whoever this was to come up the stairs, wait for them to come all the way up, and then sprint the opposite direction of wherever they were going and try to get down the stairs and out of the building in time to make it to the road without ever encountering them. I wasn't exactly anticipating being chased or anything, but I didn't want to piss off a druggie or have a homeless person who might be living there feel as though I'd trespassed and become hostile toward me. I really just didn't want to have any sort of interaction that could possibly occur at that hour in an abandoned industrial park. I held my breath for what felt like 5 minutes, but was likely closer to 30 seconds. The person appeared at the top of the stairs. To my great relief, I saw it was just the Uber driver. I figured he had come back for me, realizing he had left me at the wrong place, a place that could have worked out to be dangerous. I came out from the beam I was hidden behind and started to wave him down, but then I processed. There was no way for him to realize this had been the wrong address. My stomach lurched forward, and my blood chilled the slush. I made eye contact with him very briefly. He was completely calm and composed, but breathing heavily and blocking the stairwell down. On a normal, rational day, as an outside observer, I could think of a dozen innocent reasons he might have returned, but in that moment standing across from him, I knew in my gut that this was someone with ill intent. I can't remember much more from the ensuing few minutes. Operating solely on muscle memory and instinct, I Superman dove for the second stairwell's opening and just let myself fall down the drop. Thankfully, I don't think he'd seen where I'd gone at first, and though I was in too much pain to know it then, plenty was bruised but nothing had broken. I scrambled up and threw myself at anything that seemed like it could be a door. It was too dark to tell. I was disoriented from the fall, and I wasn't in a calm enough mindset to think to use my phone flashlight. Plus, in hindsight, some part of me probably knew it would call too much attention to my location. Just before I was able to reach the door, it flew open with a blinding light beaming straight into my eyes. My first thought, though not totally coherent, was, "There's another one of these guys. Damn!" I stumbled backward, trying to find something to hide behind. Before I could, though, a strong voice called out, "Alright, this is the name of town police department. Everyone get on your knees with your hands in the air." I didn't believe it was the police at first. I was in such fight or flight mode I had already committed to flight that I continued looking for ways to get out, but he kept shining the flashlight right at me as I teetered around and yelled, "Hey, I said on the ground, right now! Hands out! Hands out where I can see them!" He sounded so authoritative that I just automatically did exactly as he asked. He approached me and shined the flashlight away from me. It took a second to get my night vision, but once I did, I could see he really was an officer. I tried to explain what was happening, but first he started asking me all these questions, and that combined with what just happened, and the fear of my driver coming back, snowballed into being unable to form a single articulate sentence. He even was asking easy questions too, like, "What's your name? Would you rather talk here or outside?" In my total stunned babbling in response, it led him to believe I was on something. He directed me out to his car, and once I was safely out of the building, I was able to start getting my bearings just a little. I sat on the edge of the back seat of the squad car with the door open facing out, while he stood across from me and asked those same questions again. The first thing I could think to ask was, "Did my friends call you? What did they tell you?" He explained that no, nobody had called him. He was patrolling the area and noticed a car idling outside the building that's known to be condemned. Nobody was supposed to be inside, and usually when they were up to no good. He was launching into a speech about how if I'd gone to shoot up or meet a John, he had resources that could direct me to help, and it was not an ideal place to do either of those things, as it was dangerous. He started asking me if I had somewhere safe to stay the night, but I was stuck on something else he'd said. Finally, it clicked. The car. I spilled my whole rideshare story in a frantic word vomit. He looked around, but the car wasn't there anymore. The officer guessed the guy had driven off while we were talking inside the building. He asked me all the details I remembered, and I told him, but there weren't many. I'd been too tired when the ride started to track much. Thankfully, the officer realized I could pull up my app on Uber and get all the information. There wasn't really enough reception there, even outdoors, so we sped down the road. Once I had enough bars, the app roared to life. I saw I had 4 missed notifications from Uber. "Hello? I've arrived. I don't see you. Can you confirm the pickup address is correct? I'm flashing my hazards." And finally, "Unfortunately, your driver had to cancel." At first, I thought the driver was so cunning as to pick me up while sending these fake messages and canceling so the GPS wouldn't track us, knowing I wouldn't notice because I was asleep with my phone off. But instead, I checked the car details. I checked again. It was definitely not the same driver. The person who'd driven me there had not been my Uber. My driver was somewhere else on the street when this guy pulled up to me. The policeman took my statement and said they would keep an eye out for the man. The best I could give them to go off of, though, was basically young Caucasian man with brown hair, which is like 1 out of every 4 guys in the city. I feel blessed to have survived this near miss, though. Suffice it to say, I do not take rideshare services anymore. Quadruple check your license plate and driver name. You just never know. A few years back when I was 17 years old, I went to a party. Everything was alright until the host started getting really intense and creepy. By that point, it was around 3 a.m. and I was pretty drunk. I decided to call an Uber in order to avoid any advances from the insistent guy. The Uber showed up. I tried to sober up when I got in. The driver started making small talk with me, and in the state I was in, I failed to see the red flags. He started to ask me about the party I was at. I told him about the creep, but he just told me it was because I was short and cute. He then asked my age. Sensing a weird vibe from him, I told him I was a minor, thinking that would deter any further advances. It turned out that was a horrible idea. He was driving pretty recklessly on the highway, and I snapped out of my drunken stupor real fast. He then asked me to go get drinks with him that same night and told me he really liked me. I quickly told him I'd get grounded if I stayed out any later, and my mother was awake and waiting for me at home. Keep in mind I lived in Mexico, and the amount of people, and especially women, that get murdered daily is ridiculously high. When we got to my home address, I noticed the doors were locked. He kept insisting on us going to get a drink, even though by now it was almost 4 a.m. I tried to act as nice as possible when I told him I couldn't that night. He then asked for my phone number and told me we could go out the next day. Not being the first time some creep had asked me for my number in a situation like this, I gave him my number but changed the last digit so he wouldn't actually be able to contact me. Then he actually dialed the phone as I was getting out of the car. Of course, my phone didn't ring. He started getting agitated and said I'd given him the wrong number. I played drunk and stupid and recited my number again, but actually said it correctly in order for him to think he heard the last number wrong. He chuckled and said it was his bad and told me we'd see each other the next day. I made my way into my house and immediately woke my mom up because I was terrified. She managed to calm me down and told me to go to sleep. I went into my bedroom and started putting my pajamas on when I heard my phone ringing. The Uber driver was trying to video call me. I lost my shit when I saw that on my screen. I immediately denied the call and then noticed he'd sent me about 15 messages asking what time he could come pick me up and why I wasn't replying. Of course, I blocked him right away and thought that would be the end of it. Well, the very next day, I got a text from an unknown number. I checked the picture and saw it was the driver. He asked why I'd blocked him and started spamming me. Immediately, I blocked him again. Over the course of the next month, I get messages from all these random phone numbers. It quickly became obvious it was the driver. I would always block him, but eventually I reported him on the Uber app and changed my number. My only problem is, I'm worried that he knows where I live.